Aston Villa. It's a weird one to preview because there's a lot of different variables in the Premier League right now, and Aston Villa themselves have had some good games. More about that in just a second. But it's a big weekend. City go away to Brighton after their Sporting Lisbon thrashing. Arsenal go away to Chelsea after their loss to Inter. Liverpool absolutely, I think they dumbfounded Bayer Leverkusen. Didn't do a review on that one. Sorry guys, I've been away. And it's weird to see Liverpool top of the Champions League. It feels good, but it's weird to see Liverpool top of the Premier League. It feels good, but it feels a little ahead of where everyone else predicted. And guess what? The people who are talking about sleeping on Liverpool, those kind of things, the people who are apologising, the people, all these kind of things, they just didn't know us. They didn't know what we had in the team. Alonso is talking about Liverpool being a complete side. I think we've overlooked the fact that Liverpool have this kind of adaptable front line and the weird position that Slot seems to enjoy playing either Diaz or Gakpo, or mostly Jota. But maybe, there's a something there that we're just dumbfounding other teams with, and we didn't quite know what we had because they were profiled differently to other players. Now we're beginning to see the shape of this Liverpool team and the potential of this Liverpool team, where Curtis Jones fits in. We were a little bit unsure about that. Whether Tsimikas is that good backup left back, whether Nunez is going to be a long-term plan for Liverpool, the space he gets into, all these kind of things. Where Diaz, Gakpo, Salah play in that front line. Chiesa, Jota, both out, both apparently coming back after the international break. I read the exact quote. He says, no timescale has been placed on the Italian's return to action as Reds continue to build up his fitness. Slot on the 29th of October said, this is about Chiesa, that's actually difficult to say because he goes a bit up and down. Fair enough. Sometimes he's there with us, training for a few days, and then he goes out with an injury. This is the most Dutch way of speaking about something, by the way. So, I don't want to put days or weeks on it because I think we just have to make sure he gets in the best possible shape. He was talking about him not having played for Juve for a while, obviously not having played for Liverpool. They thought he could play half an hour, then they thought he could play 60 minutes. They didn't know whether he was able to start, all these kind of things. Liverpool we need that one extra body in there. We need someone else who I think, attacking-wise, can just relieve a little bit of the pressure, because I think coming towards the end of this stressful period and with the international break coming up and all these kind of things, there's danger. Liverpool have been through a lot of big games. We've obviously managed to rotate in some really key areas, but now coming up against your Villas, then we've got a couple of weeks off. Then there is a really difficult run of games. We need to keep the pressure up on these teams at the top of the table and capitalise while we can. It's weird because I read an article the other day about Arsenal, right? And this one journalist was basically saying, oh, well, if Arsenal continue at this rate, they will get 68 points at the end of the season. But you can't really do that kind of maths. You can't really say, because the whole season isn't as difficult as the other parts. The end of the season is more difficult because you're more tired, but the beginning of the season is more difficult because you possibly play harder teams. This part of the season is like that mixing pot between the two. And the weird thing is, getting momentum in the Premier League is very hard at the moment because there's always a tripping block. There's always a Villa, there's always a Brighton, there's always a block of teams, basically all the way down to the relegation zone, that on any one weekend, like your Forests, we didn't know about Forest at that time, but obviously like your Forests, that tactically just know how to set up. They know how to take advantage of whatever it is that you have going on, because guess what? Their coaches are really good at mitigating risk and maximising the counter-attack or, transitional plays. And that's huge. And I think that's why, when City don't have Rodri, someone who's very good at controlling the tempo of the game, Arsenal don't have, say, an Odegaard in there, someone who's very good at controlling the tempo of the game. Liverpool this weekend will be lacking Alexis McAllister, someone I think is very good at getting Liverpool a foothold in the game. It gives Aston Villa an opportunity. It's, by the way, the reason McAllister's not in there, he's got these 5 yellow cards built up in the Premier League. But what we do then have to do is shift towards, I saw it in my comment section, someone was suggesting that Endo starts. I think we might see Endo start this weekend. There's a weird possibility, and I'm just going to float this idea. Do you think there is enough balance in Gravenberch, Jones and Szoboszlai? Or are we looking at too many 10-star players rather than 2 6s and a 10, or a 6 and 8 and a 10? What we have seen in these last few games is the adaptability that Slot brings to a team, the advantages of having a manager who can reprofile players, Gakpo, I think, has changed his profile since being under Klopp. Maybe we're seeing that possibly Klopp was trying to fit a couple of these players into profiles they weren't more comfortable in. They're making a striker out of Diaz. The finishes on all of those goals against Bayern Leverkusen were elite, right? Bayer Leverkusen, not Bayern Leverkusen. And what you saw there was someone who, A, scores lots of goals because he's definitely that kind of player, but B, when he gets into these kind of positions, when he's asked to get in these kind of positions, is a real poacher, is someone who can turn games, is someone who, when you have the absolute control of the match, which I never expected to have that much control, even though they've only lost, this is a great stat, right? Liverpool, since they lost Jordan Henderson, Bayern Leverkusen have only lost 2 games since Jordan Henderson last played for Liverpool. I don't know how that's really related between the two, but you get my point. And what we're seeing now, I think it's not just about having one manager. It's about committing to the system you have. We're fully committed to the slot system. Alonso is calling Liverpool a complete team. Over on my Patreon, I'm going to analyse what complete team means, whether that's just a throwaway phrase or whether that's actually something that we should pay some attention to. I think maybe Slot and a couple of other people would argue that Liverpool aren't quite complete yet, but there you can see the other side of it where Liverpool are possibly complete. The midfield was a place that we really overran Bayer on the middle of the week, and I think the same is going to happen against Villa. We've seen, obviously, Duran has been their more clinical player this season. Ollie Watkins still a great striker, but he hasn't quite been as clinical or effective, I think, in some of these games as you would want him to be in the Premier League or in the Champions League. And I think it's impacting where we're seeing Villa at right now, because they're not able to control games in the same way. They're not able to scare teams in the same way. I'm not saying that they won't try and control against Liverpool. They won't scare Liverpool. Those things are perfectly, we should expect they will try and control the game back. But I think what they're going to try and do is mitigate Liverpool's strengths this season. So mitigate our transitional play. If we do want to have some possession, they're going to try and take that away from, these are all kind of cliches anyway, but they're going to try and take those passing lanes away from us that we really enjoy. Aston Villa are going to try and do that in the same way as AC Milan did that. A couple of other teams, Villa are very... There's a kind of a proxy between them and what we can say what happened with Forest as well. They really took away a lot of Liverpool's passing lanes, stacked the midfield in that area and really closed Liverpool down. There's going to be a lot of pressing. We're going to be asked to play out of the back a lot. And without someone like McAllister in the midfield to drop in, I think we might see Curtis Jones drop a little deeper. I think we might see someone like Szoboszlai come in and we'll see a midfield 3 of those guys, Gravenberch, Jones and Szoboszlai. Of course, Jones is coming through in a great way. I love seeing the reprofiling of him. We'll see who sort of sits a little deeper, goes on. I wonder if this is a game where you break an Endo out. I don't think it's quite a Tyler Morton game yet. I'm not sure we've seen like a profile that Tyler Morton fits in a Premier League sense. I think he's been very good in the cup game, but outside of that, I'm not sure we've seen that yet. And I think overall, Liverpool will want to keep momentum, but it's virtually a league where it's very hard to get momentum. And I think players now are almost trained to not put too much stock into momentum. Players are trained not to worry about a loss like that. You saw I think Liverpool used the Forest game as this is a learning. And they use it as motivation even now. You hear Slot reference it so ridiculously often. It almost kind of frustrates me how often I hear him reference it. But obviously, I don't enjoy looking back on Liverpool's big dips, but we did definitely learn something from them. Villa themselves, I think, have had a very frustrating season. Beating someone like Munich and then being sixth in the Premier League and beating someone like Munich is obviously a really huge achievement for them. But I also think they're probably looking at Forest. They're probably looking at, Manchester United, who'll be catching up behind them. They're probably looking at the Chelsea guys and thinking, we should be in those situations. Villa at this point haven't had a great run of form more recently. They've had 3 draws, a loss and a win in their last 5 games. And they're equal on points with Arsenal, which I think is pretty good. If Arsenal are in the title shout, then actually that's a ridiculous thing to say. Villa and Arsenal, 2 very different profiles of team. They're level on points with Chelsea, so they've got just as much chance as them, and they're only 1 point behind Forest. They are currently 7 points off the top of Liverpool and 5 points off Man City. They're 2 ahead of Spurs. And if Brighton win this weekend, they'll go level, but I think goal difference might be the thing. Yeah, goal difference would take Brighton above Villa. Say Villa lost and Brighton won. But Liverpool, this is a weird thing, right? Everyone's talking about, I think it's momentum that is the more important thing than stacking games up. Liverpool need to keep this level of momentum up. And under Slot, it's a very different kind of momentum than the one that we see under Klopp. I think Anfield feels a lot calmer. I think it certainly feels fired up under certain games, and it's something we haven't seen like in the middle of the week up until this point. We'll see that again for Real Madrid. We'll see that again for a couple of other teams visiting in the next couple of weeks. But I think what we are seeing now is a calmness to this side. We're seeing a very different, almost slot-like approach to the games, which we'd had seen, but we weren't sure what was going to evolve out of that. And so now we've got like a consistent level of games that we can draw from. We know how Liverpool play. We know that they don't panic if they go behind. We know that even when they do score one, then there's ways they can shift the game. And I think what I'm really looking forward to seeing is the tactical matchup between Unai Emery and Arne Slot. I think Villa are obviously very unfortunate to lose in the middle of the week, a kind of a misnomer of a weird penalty, like whatever that shout was. That was a weird situation for them to find themselves in. But the Spurs game is definitely not an unusual one. I mean, Spurs managed to absolutely rout Villa. And I think Villa will consider themselves to be a little unfortunate that they, every team obviously feels unfortunate they get a rout. Villa only scored the one. They probably should have scored two. I still think Spurs win, even if they score two. Obviously, they win if they score two. But you get my point. Like, I think Villa were the second best team in that game to Spurs. Spurs, by the way, are massively better since they lost to Arsenal in that game at home, frustratingly. Palace beat them. Bournemouth also drew against them. They won against Bologna. I don't think that's all that much of an achievement. They obviously won against Fulham, and then the Manchester United game, they also drew that one as well. They've been so on and off that I'm not quite sure what Liverpool are visiting. But I understand, I think Villa are a top team, and I think Unai Emery is a top manager. And with that, what we're going to end up seeing is, I think we're going to see them shift quite a lot. And, Watkins, we've seen these these kind of strikers worry that Liverpool back line because they do run the channels. He's going to be looking at running between, and, say it's him or Duran. There's going to be looking at running in between any of those three lanes that basically are set between those four players. If you run Watkins into those, I know Kelleher's a fantastic goalkeeper, but they'll have a chance of scoring. And you saw it against Leverkusen, but you also saw it in the game before that as well, and we've seen it a couple of times. When Liverpool get balls into the channel, there's a couple of times where we can be opened up, and we really rely on Kelleher to be a more consistent character, in the same way as we relied on Alisson for quite some time now. I think the difference between Kelleher and Alisson is, I think we probably see Alisson's distribution and the confidence and the first-team nature of the way that he holds himself slightly differently to the way that we see Kelleher hold himself, just because he's currently seen as number two, but I think he probably could be number one in many other Premier League teams. And I think what we're also looking at now is the fact that there is this glut of teams who are really just, if they finish in the top four, those managers know we can kick on to challenge, because there is basically this three, and then there's just a glut of teams. And they know they have to capitalise while United aren't there, while Newcastle don't have Jose Mourinho, while Spurs are stuttering, whilst Brighton are still getting this team together. I think we're going to see some more shock results this weekend. And I won't be surprised if it flipped. I won't be surprised if City win against Brighton, Arsenal win against Chelsea away, and something happens to Liverpool where Villa manage to take a point off them or even win, because Liverpool are obviously away. And I think that's the frustrating aspect for me here. I think a lot of people are just, Liverpool away, Liverpool at home, I mean Villa away. The frustrating aspect here is, pre-international break, you want to get the momentum because you want to have that push into the international break. I suppose there's a fairly good recovery game on the other side of it, Southampton away. But my point, Southampton's still a decent team, it's still Premier League side, but you get my point. Everyone every week is just shifting this title towards one team or the other, or not giving anyone an opportunity. I still don't think we're really in that much of an opportunity to, give an opinion on who's going to win a Premier League this season, or whatever it is. Sure, Liverpool I think look very consistent. I think Leverkusen are a very good team, but again, I'm really not sure we've seen anyone go up against Liverpool that's really challenged them yet. And maybe it's because I think as a mentality, as a set of fans now, I'm kind of used to this late dying embers of a game shifts in matches. But I really want to see how we cope when a team put it on us. Because I kind of want those fortifying things. I kind of want these experiences. I enjoy those experiences. And maybe I should get a little more used to an Arne Slot style of football. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. There is Patreon, there is a Discord. Go join us in there, and we'll see you guys over the weekend for more goodness for the Liverpool game. Much love.